So we're up to preferred stock. And preferred stock has a few characteristics. It's a different class of stock from common. The main thing about preferred stock is it does not have a vote, usually. It does not vote. It has several contractual preferences over common stock. I'll talk a little bit more about them later on. But the preferred stock can be callable. The company can call it in, that's a possibility. It can also be convertible under certain circumstances, convertible to common stock. Okay, so with the accounting for preferred stock is about exactly, well, the issuing of the stock is exactly the same as for issuing common stock, except you have to call it preferred stock because it's preferred stock. Okay, so if we issue 5,000 shares of $100 par preferred stock for cash at $130 per share, okay, we'll just sort this out a little bit. We're going to get cash. We're going to issue preferred stock. It has a par value, so we know that this is probably going to be paid in capital in excess of par value. And here we would have to say on preferred. And I always just abbreviate that preferred, just because you can, but as long as I know it's not common, you have to say, make some distinction between common and preferred. So how much are we getting? Well, you've got 5,000 shares. We issued it at $130 a share. So that comes out to $650,000. So that's the amount of cash we got. So we would say that. How much do we attribute to the preferred stock? Well, it would be the 5,000 shares times the $100 par value. Okay, looks like that comes out to 500,000. Yes. And then the rest would be the paid in capital in excess of par value on your preferred stock. Okay, so that's basically, make sure you're calling it preferred stock. Make sure that you indicate that the additional paid-in capital is on the preferred, because that's separate from your additional paid-in capital on the common stock. Okay, for paying the dividends on preferred stock, it's a little bit different than common stock. With common stock, they'll say, yeah, you've got 1,000 shares of stock, you're paying $2 on each one. That's easy enough. Here, the stock will be usually you'll stipulate that the stock is a certain percent, and that gives you the dividend. So let's, so if we have, this is 10,000 shares of $100 par, and usually they would say 5% cumulative stock. That 5% is the amount of the dividend. And so we have to figure out how to compute that. So when you're paying dividends on the preferred stock, it's going to be the same as you did for common, except it's going to be preferred. But you're going to have, let's see, what's the best way to do this? You could do, it'd be cash dividends because they're cash rather than stock dividends. But I would make sure that you say cash dividends preferred, and then you would have your dividends payable. And then you could have the date of record, where you do a memo on the date of record, and then you would just debit your dividends payable and credit cash when you pay the dividends. Now, the tricky part with the preferred stock is to figure out how much is that dividend. So basically, to compute the dividend, you're going to take the number of shares of stock, that's 10,000 shares of stock, times the par value. So it would be times the $100 par value. And that's going to give you the amount that preferred stock is showing up on the ledger account and on the balance sheet. So this would be $1 million, okay? So you're taking the number of shares of stocks times the par value. That gives you the value of the preferred stock. And then it's a 5% dividend, so times 0.05 would give you the amount of the dividend that we're going to be paying on this stocks each year. So that would be an annual dividend of $50,000. Now, that would be $50,000, the annual dividend. So now if it were non-cumulative stock, we could simply say, yeah, we'll pay, 50,000. But this is cumulative. And that means that we have to pay all the dividends that have not been paid on that stock in the past before we pay our common stockholders anything. And so it says the company has not paid dividends for the past 2 years. So we got to pay those 2 years plus this year. And then if we have anything left over, we can pay a common dividend. So it would be 50,000 for this year plus 100,000 for the 2 years dividends in arrears. Okay? So we would have 150,000 and dividends payable of 150, and we paid it. And then we would be all square with our preferred stockholders. Okay, so in the notes, I get into a little bit more detail on, there's some really pretty good examples there. One of the preferences that preferred stock has is that they have to receive their dividends before the common stockholders get anything. So some of the problems that you'll run into is the company just declares a dividend of, $500,000 in total. And then they'll ask you to figure out how much of that goes to the preferred, and then the rest of it can go to the common stockholders. So with the preferred stock, we're going to do the computation of it's 5%. To get what it's 5% of, you have to take the number of shares of preferred times the par value. That gives you the value of the preferred stock, and the 5% of that gives you the amount of the dividend each year. If it is cumulative, you have to make sure that all the past dividends are paid before the common stockholders get anything. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I also go into a bit more detail on sort of the nature of common stock, in case you're really ambitious and want to know all about that. But this is basically sort of the basics of what you need to know here.